Good evening. Welcome to Chicago Youth Symphony Orchestra's annual Getting into College 101 Masterclass. My name is Dr. Jenny O. Brown, and I am CYSO's Executive Director. We have 4 excellent panelists with us tonight who will be sharing their knowledge about the admissions and audition process, as well as info on scholarships, financial aid, and general good-to-know advice. While all 4 of the panelists on the call tonight represent great schools, CYSO does not endorse any college, university, or conservatory over another. As educators, we know that there's no one right college, only the one that's right for you. There's no shortage of schools that will equip you for your future, and we hope our conversation tonight will help you as you consider what kind of school would be the best fit for your individual goals. To get us started, our panelists will share with you some important information we think might answer many of your questions. After that, we will answer questions that you offer in the Facebook Live comments. Feel free to submit your questions on the stream at any time. With that, let me introduce each of our guests. From Wheaton College, we have Rhonda Sisson, Music Recruitment Manager for Wheaton College Conservatory of Music. Representing the University of Wisconsin is Jared Jellison, Undergraduate Admissions Coordinator, Mead, Witter School of Music, UW-Madison. Emma Davis is joining us from the Manhattan School of Music, where she is the Senior Associate Director of Admissions. And finally, Dr. Heather McCowen of College Inside Track is joining us to provide an independent, non-institutional voice. Panelists, thank you to all of you for sharing your time and expertise with the CYSO community tonight. So I'll jump in with a couple of questions. What are the major differences between a university school of music and a conservatory of music?
So I don't mind taking this one to start. I'm like Jenny mentioned, my name is Emma Davis. I'm from Manhattan School of Music. And if you are familiar with Manhattan School of Music, you might know it's a music conservatory. So when I talk about the difference between a music conservatory and a school of music within a larger institution, it has a lot to do with the curriculum. So a conservatory experience, especially for us, is going to be extremely focused on your major. All of our students are music performance majors. So let's say you come in, you're a classical violin major. All of your classes are going to be in the vein of being a classical violinist. Even those humanities classes that you're taking, they're still coming at it from the perspective of an artist. So no math and sciences on our end, which I know can be a relief for some musicians. But again, totally focused on that music education. A school of music within a larger institution, that's going to be more of a liberal arts degree, but I will turn that over to my colleagues who are actually from institutions more like that.
Thanks, Emma. I would add, in our case, Wheaton is a conservatory of music offering the professional Bachelor of Music and Bachelor of Music Education degrees, but within the context of the liberal arts college. So our students do specialize in those professional music degrees, and the bulk of their study is in music, but we do have a general education requirement for music majors, and they're living alongside and playing alongside, in some cases, students from every other major at our institution. So there are also places where you can have a liberal arts education or access to other degree programs or minors, but also get that professional music degree. And that would be the case. But each school, like Emma said, is a little bit different, and you just have to do some research to know exactly which direction you might want to go. So.
The only thing I have to add is, and this may come later on, but my suggestion to applicants. When you're researching schools, a really good question to ask is just, whoever you may find in the School of Music, be it someone like me or wherever, ask them, are you a conservatory or not? And if they are conservatory, to inquire more about that. Like, is this more like what Emma had described, where pretty much everything you do is focused on music, or is this conservatory that is within the context of a liberal arts university, like Rhonda had discussed. So that's my suggestion to you. When you're researching universities, ask them, are you a conservatory? And if they say yes, ask to know more about that, whether it's all going to be about music or if it's within the context of the liberal arts university where you're still going to get a little bit of general education. For my university, it's a liberal arts university. We're not a conservatory. We have a large degree and a smaller one, but we're not a conservatory at all.
And so much really comes down to the whole fit of everything, and how much you want to do in your major and outside your major. One thing that's really important to understand is that every single one of these institutions does offer a Bachelor of Music degree, and it is key. And I think when we're talking about that, you'll hear about, and they may also offer a certificate program, but what we're talking about is a bachelor's degree. One question I've gotten is, well, I want to go to a music school. Is that still a bachelor's degree? Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And it's just what context you're doing that in. So, the Manhattan School of Music is a phenomenal institution that offers a wonderful bachelor's degree. Wheaton offers a wonderful bachelor's degree, another phenomenal institution. So, but it's a bachelor's degree. That's going to be key, is I think really when you're looking at this, the bachelor's degree, and they're all bachelor's degree. It's just how much is in your major and how much is outside.
Terrific, thank you. How important is it for students to research the schools that they will apply to?
1,000,000% important. It's so you may not know this, but an academic study of music is kind of the first of the arts to get the academic treatment. There are so many music schools. They were the first ones. They had degrees in music before they had degrees in dance and theater, and so there are so many great options. And one of the few good things that come out of this pandemic is that all of these colleges really stepped up their game on virtual visits. So you don't have to get in your private jet and fly all around to these schools and go visit. That's a great idea if you can do it, but you don't have to. Also, and I want to stop talking in a minute, but the people you have here, this is key. If you have someone whose specialty is music admissions, that is the key to the castle. They know all of the great stuff. And this is who you should be talking about to do your research. And I'm going to let them talk about it.
I think one of the more important things in terms of doing the research is I kind of break it down into 3 categories for music school specifically. The first is going to be the location. So where do you want to be for your college experience? Maybe you want to be in a big city. Maybe you want to be in a small town. That's up for you to decide. And it's important for you to kind of suss out where in the country, what is the vibe right on that campus, which leads into my next point, the vibe on the campus, the community aspect within that school. How do the students interact with one another? How, what's student life like? Because you're coming to school as a musician, but you're also a human and you're also trying to be a college student. So don't forget that you want to experience life as a college student in addition to working with incredible faculty, which I just set myself up for my third point, the faculty. So, you want to think about who am I going to study with for these next 4 years? I guarantee you at all of our schools, we have incredible faculty and you're going to learn from the best of the best, no matter where you go, if you're going to school for music. But it's so important to find someone that you jive with, whose teaching style you're really excited about. So maybe you find that at MSM, maybe you find that at Wheaton, but you will only figure that out if you do the research. So again, my 3 things: location, community, and professors, faculty.
I would just add to that as you research and as you get narrowed into a particular kind of school or location within geographically, maybe you want to look in a certain area of the country, keep in mind that every school is going to have a slightly different timeline and a slightly different process. So those are things that you also want to, but that's kind of a step 2 in terms of your research. Once you sort of have a sense of what kind of school you're headed toward, then you can kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what are their deadlines and what are their scholarship requirements and what things do I need to know about the audition requirements and all of that. So those are details that it's very helpful to look in advance and then use resources like each of us. We are this is what we do. Every day we talk to students and parents. We like to talk to students more than we like to talk to parents, but we'll do both. We help navigate that process for our school, and it is slightly different. We find that you do just have to kind of keep a checklist or keep a list of dates or a spreadsheet, whatever helps you to stay organized and meet the timelines and the deadlines as they progress through the year, your senior year especially.
Yeah, I think what Emma said about location, community, and faculty is really, really important. That's a really great way of summarizing it. Thank you. And Rhonda has a really good point about however you want to do it. I mean, it doesn't, whether you just write it down in a notebook or whatever, just keeping track of the different deadlines, because it's frustrating if you miss a deadline just because you didn't write it down or something like that. And then other than that, I also kind of already made this point that just you check whether it's conservatory or not. and that's all I have to add.
I just wanted to add a couple more points with regard to location. Sometimes where your school is located can really impact what your next step is. So for example, if you know that you want to be a music ed major and that you're just going to do a bachelor's for now, and you might eventually like to teach and settle in a particular area, that might be a good reason to look at schools in that area too, because the networks that they have may be really sort of deeply rooted in that particular area. Just something to think about, because I know that you're all considering many different types of degrees as well. Okay, so let's talk about the importance of teachers. So for music students, the teacher is really central to this decision process. So is it important for a student to take a lesson and have an interview with the instructor at the university conservatory of interest before they make an application? And for performance majors, how do you know which teacher will be the best teacher for you? And how does it affect where you apply?
I guess I'll kick us off again. We obviously taking a lesson with a faculty member is a huge advantage for you in terms of doing that research, like we were talking about in the previous question. It gives you a good sense of what that relationship would be like with them, what repertoire they teach, what methods they teach, etc. Now, I don't want you all to think that you have to take trial lessons with faculty in order to apply and in order to get accepted. Oftentimes, faculty, and at least the way that we work at MSM, we do not regulate the trial lessons that are happening. So a faculty could give you a free trial lesson, they could give you a reduced rate, or they could give you their full New York City teaching rate. I don't keep track of that. So I don't want to tell you to go out there and spend all this money getting all these trial lessons. It's not necessary in terms of being accepted. The only thing it does is give you more information. Now, it's helpful information, but it is not necessary. You can also get a lot of information out of a teacher by sending them an email and having a back and forth that way. You can learn a lot about them in that way. You can learn about them in your audition. You go in the room, you interact with them, they maybe ask you to play this, that, and the other. You can have a conversation with them in that respect. So I don't want you to think that you need to shell out all this money for these trial lessons in order to make your chances greater in getting into a college. I'm just saying that it's a good advantage for you to have that research, but you certainly do not need to do it. There are so many ways for you to get to know these faculty just by reading their bios, looking up video clips of performances they've done in the past. We are in the age of the internet. We are long into the age of the internet, and everybody has a lot of information out there. So you can really do a lot of research just with your computer about who these people are, what their background is, and maybe even connect with an admissions person and ask if you can talk to one of their current students. They would be an incredible resource about what is it like to study with this person? What is their studio like? So if you don't want to make the huge financial commitment that is taking lesson upon lesson upon lesson, there are so many other creative ways to get all of the information you need. It's just about what method you want to go down, but we can always be here to help you creatively problem solve and get the information that you need.
I would always, this is great. And some schools do this, and this is really in the individual schools. Sometimes they'll let you observe a lesson. If you're not, it's a little intimidating to walk in and have to play for somebody in a lesson that you don't know. But if you can observe them teaching someone that they've already established that bond, that could be great. But that varies definitely by college. But you would talk to Rhonda at Wheaton and see if this is something that a teacher does, and they would set that up. Another thing, we have these Zoom ones, that's great. Also, I would hope that anybody who's doing Chicago Youth Orchestra is taking private lessons. So tap into your own private teacher they know, or who at least they know by reputation, and that can help a lot. When I work with families, we work on the list, and who's teaching where, and I say, okay, go take this college list to your bassoon teacher and talk through it, because they're going to have insights. Their professional network is going to be really key to this. Also, but you should gel with the teacher. I'm a bassoonist. There's usually one bassoon teacher at the school. So if you don't click with that bassoon teacher, you're kind of out of luck, where there's maybe 4 or 5 violin teachers, or 7 voice teachers. So all of that kind of has to go into the mix. But observing a lesson could be a nice halfway point. And Zoom lessons, if you can get the noise suppression thing to work on your Zoom meeting, that doesn't always happen. That can also be a really good way to do it.
Yes, and I agree with my colleagues here. We have students, in my experience, sometimes students take a lesson with a faculty member as they're preparing early on, or even before, as they're sort of narrowing down their choices of colleges to apply to. So we have students coming in as early as junior year, the fall of their junior year, sometimes late in their sophomore year even. We also have students that wait until after they've been accepted or admitted, and then they take a trial lesson or 2. And that helps them narrow that down. So I think most schools most faculty members welcome that process. They want to meet you. They want to assist you in your journey and help you figure things out, help you find the right fit, and that it helps them as well as it helped you. And many schools, Wheaton is one of them, where we offer free trial lessons, or free sample lessons, and our faculty offer those to students when they request them. So that's there may be that kind of efficiency or help to you too. Just don't hesitate to ask. And again, we'll always kind of come back to ask the admissions person, ask the recruitment person at the school for help or guidance or timelines or contact information. All of that, that's what we do. So we will be glad to give you some help facilitate that process for you.
The only thing I have to add is that there are a lot of school of music, a lot of music departments right now, which is great. And for the people that teach at pretty much those positions, the vast majority of them have master's or doctoral degrees. I mean, they're all very, very skilled people. Now, for example, when I did my college search, I had the main universities I was primarily interested, and then I had a short list of backup schools. We call them backup schools, just like if I don't get into here, I consider this, right? So if you're looking at, say, backup schools, and you're not sure whether or not you want to apply to them, really take a look at the professor that teaches your instrument, because luckily these days we have YouTube and we have Instagram. Our professors are doing on Instagram. I don't know about other places, but I guess there's a lot of people on Instagram. But Instagram, YouTube, right, of professors playing, you can listen to them and just go with your gut. Does this person, speak to the intangibles that you gravitate to as a musician? Is this someone whose playing excites you and interests you? And if so, then that is someone to really consider studying with, regardless of the size of the university that person teaches at, regardless of how well known they are in the classical / jazz / whatever music world, because there are a lot of, for lack of a better term, hidden gems of professors that maybe teach at a smaller school but are phenomenal and they play so well. And if you find those professors, you find people that interest you, right? Interest you as a musician, as an artist, please reach out to them and ask if they're available for a sample lesson. One of the very few nice things that came of COVID is that now a lot of people teach sample lessons via Zoom. So if you can't go there, you can't drive there, you can still have some sort of lesson experience and see how you feel. Because if you do that process, you might actually find that you're really, what was a backup school actually becomes a school that you become much more interested because that person there really excites you. So that's all I have to add.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to add to that a couple of quick things. For many instruments, there are conferences that you can go to, and that's a great way to kind of sample like many different teachers and their teaching styles. You can go see them in master classes. Sometimes, not all the time, they might even be willing to give you a private lesson at the different conferences so that you can potentially take a lesson with several people all at once. So just a couple of thoughts. Okay, let's go on ahead to the application process. So what are the major characteristics that colleges look at during the admissions process?
I can start with this one.
Mhm.
And also, I would just add one more thing. You might consider a summer program. Many colleges and music schools, conservatories have summer experiences. So if you're a sophomore or a junior and you're looking at another 2 or another year before you start applications, there may be a summer program that you could apply to and really get a feel, really be immersed for a week or 2 weeks or longer in that program and with those faculty. So look for those opportunities too at the schools you might be interested in. What are schools looking for? We are in our context at Wheaton, we have a faith element. So we are looking for students who value their faith and they want to study whatever they want to study, in your case, music and maybe something else in that context. So we're looking for a student that agrees with the statement of faith that Wheaton offers. We're also looking for a high academic standard. So we have a set of expectations that we'd like you to meet academically in order to, because we require some of that liberal arts, gen ed element to our degree program. And then not least, but thirdly, we do require a certain set of musical accomplishments and a standard that you would bring. So we have the audition process to figure, to sort that out. We have music profiles to sort of ask what, if you've had theory in your background, if you've taken any music theory in high school or dual enrollment theory, have you taken piano? If you're a string player, do you have a basic knowledge of the keyboard and piano skills? We want to know those things as well. So those are, I would include that in your music, in the music side of who you are. We want to get to know you as a whole person. So we want to know where you've spent your time, what you love to do. We want you to be to present yourself as honestly and as clearly as you can through that application process. Some colleges require an essay as part of that process. Some require test scores, some don't. That may change over the next year. One way or the other. So again, with your research, sort of keep looking at those requirements and those action steps along the way, so you're prepared and not caught off guard.
I also think it's going to vary by school. There are some schools where the audition plays a much bigger role in the process than other schools. I used to work at Roosevelt University, and when I used to work there, it might be different now. I turned down, many 4.0 students if they couldn't pass the audition, but I accepted a lot of 2.5 students who had phenomenal auditions. That's just the role the audition played in that process. Excuse me, I'm a proud graduate of the Northwestern University Mead School of Music. I don't know if I could get in there these days, but I do know that the academics are huge there, and you have to start at a very high academic level before you can even really get to the music part. So that's just how Northwestern does it. And every school has their own thing. So again, this is where your research and talking to these wonderful people that are in music admissions. And I really want to emphasize, you want to talk to the music admissions people. I started my career at SMU in Dallas, Texas. I remember hearing one of the general tour guides talk about how Southern Methodist had Mozart's piano and Dvorak's violin. They do not, but this was the general admission person trying real hard to sell this school. You want to talk to the music people. You want to talk to them. All love to the general admissions people. Talk to the music people. They're going to tell you exactly what you need to know about this.
I think this also kind of ties into this conversation of a school of music versus a conservatory in terms of what the school is looking for in that admissions decision. Obviously, like Conservatory, Manhattan School of Music, the audition score is the most important piece of the puzzle for us. There is a pre-screen audition that you submit with your application due December 1st. For most instruments, not everybody has to do a pre-screen. So if you're thinking of applying to MSM or any conservatory for that fact, definitely look at the pre-screen and audition requirements because it does vary based on the instrument. I would say a good number of our majors do require the pre-screen. So then by mid-December, we release pre-screen results, and then you are able to sign up for your audition with us. So again, audition is the most important piece of the puzzle, but I would say that MSM does a really incredible job of having this very unique, diverse kind community. And I think the part of the application that we're looking at that when that comes into play is my side of it. So obviously the faculty are looking at your audition, they're giving you that score. That's that piece of the puzzle. My colleagues and myself, we are the ones who are reading your application. So you have a couple of essays that you need to write. You need to submit recommendations, transcripts. Test scores are optional, so don't worry about SAT, ACT. So we're taking all of that information and, I'm writing a synopsis of who you are. So let's say you have an amazing audition and you also have a really great GPA and you've been involved in all of these interesting things and you just have an interesting backstory. That's my job in that meeting to say, oh my gosh, like not only can they play their butt off, but they are also so cool. We need to have them here. And that just kind of gets us all excited. That might play a factor into your scholarship decision. So we're really looking at audition first, and then who are you within the application secondly. To give you a black and white answer about grades, because I know that's always a big question, we're looking for about a 3.0, but similar to what Heather said, if someone comes in and they wow us with an audition and they have a 2.5 because math and science kicked their butt, we're going to turn, we're not making you take that. So we understand. Now, if you are failing a music class or something that might not look so good. So for us, audition is the number one priority, but we're also looking for really interesting human beings to kind of round out our community.
Yeah. I work at a liberal arts university. As I said before, we're not a conservatory. And for us, as noted with conservatories, the audition component is often the biggest piece of the puzzle and has a lot of weight as to whether or not you're admitted at all. So I work at UW-Madison is a liberal arts university. It's a bit different. UW-Madison, to enroll as a music major at UW-Madison, that is contingent on admission to the university as well as passing your audition. So if you are admitted by UW-Madison, that's a decision that's made by the Office of Admissions based off of a general academic review. So if you're admitted by UW-Madison and you also pass your audition, then you can enroll as a music major. Another scenario is if you are admitted by UW-Madison, if you're admitted by the Office of Admissions, but you don't pass your audition, in that scenario, you can still attend UW-Madison, but you couldn't start as a music major because you didn't pass your audition. Another scenario is if you pass your audition, but you are not admitted by the university. In that scenario, unfortunately, you cannot enroll UW-Madison at all because the university's decision supersedes the School of Music. I can't speak for every other liberal arts university, but my guess is for other liberal arts universities, it's very, very similar. So again, that kind of plays on the importance of knowing whether you're applying to a conservatory or a liberal arts university, because that's just how it's done here. And if you want more information about that, I can gladly elaborate on that, but I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you so much. So this is a short answer question. How many schools would you recommend that people apply to?
Oh, I got lots of thoughts, but 7 to 10. I'll leave it at that. 7 to 10 well-researched schools, and you should love every single one at some level, but it's okay to have favorites.
Anyone else? Emma?
I don't think I have a specific number, but I think apply to the schools that bring you joy. And if that's 5 schools, great. If that's 15 schools, you do you. But apply to schools that you're excited about, both schools that feel really realistic and others that seem more like a reach. Put yourself out there. The worst thing they're going to do is say no. They might say yes. And they should all inspire some level of joy within you.
If you can't articulate why that school's on your list, that school doesn't need to be on your list. Yeah, you gotta be able to own that. And I've had very successful music students apply to just 5 schools because they were well researched and they loved them and they love something about all of them. But yeah, if you can, and don't just, I guess that should never be your reaction. You know, that's why doing all of this research that my colleagues here have talked about is so key. Sorry, that wasn't a short answer. I'm sorry, Jenny.
I very often ask students as I'm speaking with them for the first time, what are they looking for in a college experience? What are they looking for in their bachelor's, in their pursuit of a bachelor's degree? And it's always very interesting to me whether a student can articulate what their priorities are as they're looking. And I think that's an important thing for you to start developing a list of priorities. You know, maybe it's a numbered list. Maybe the top priority is the faculty that you study with, or maybe it's being able to double major or study 2 different things, or maybe it's location. You know, maybe that's your number one thing. You know, so have a list in mind even before you start applying. And again, we go back to the research and we go back to talking with faculty and admissions representatives, music and admissions representatives, to sort of narrow that down and to sort of feel that out. Sometimes it takes a visit to know that you'd rather be at a large, you know, like UW situation over a smaller campus. Maybe you, or maybe it takes a trip to a rural area to get a feel for a campus kind of in the middle of the cornfields versus a suburban or a city feel. You know, so those visits, that research, really helpful as you narrow that down, but also super helpful to know kind of what you think you're looking for. And your parents might have some input on that too from their experiences. Your peers, the ones that are just a year or 2 ahead of you, use those friends and ask them what they love about their school, what they were looking for. Did they find it? You know, some of you in the CYSO have, you know, students who are already, you know, 2 years ahead of you or a year ahead of you. So make use of those friendships and that information as you sort of figure those things out for yourself.
And how many schools should they apply to?
I'm a mom also, and I have 2 college kids, and I had to, honestly, I made my kids apply to 3 colleges. They didn't want to pick any more than 3. So that was our magic number. 3 is a low number. So, but it is quite a bit to manage the deadlines, the visits, the audition process. So, you know, make sure you, even the application fees, some schools waive those, but you can spend a couple $100s on application fees alone. So it really is an individual call, how sure you are that you've narrowed that down. Or do you want a wider range of options to consider? Yeah, but I would be more inclined to say 5.
Thank you. How about you, Jared? What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you this. My sister applied to one university. And she did wind up getting into that university, and that was very fortuitous. But if she did not get into that university, she would have wound up in a gap year. And gap years are just fine and very legitimate and good. But if you're doing that, you want to do that on your own terms and not because you applied to a university and you didn't get in. Myself, I applied to 4 universities. And if I was forced to give a number, I'd say around 4 or 5 sounds good. And just to circle back to what I said before, for those, Heather had noted that any school that's on your list, you should have a reason for that. And I agree with that. And to circle back to what I said before about backup schools, if you really look into schools that you're considering as a backup, really look into their faculty, really look into their music departments, you are probably going to find some things you really like about that you otherwise would have overlooked. And by doing that process that I talked about before, you will wind up with some esteem for those backup schools. So if you don't get into whatever's number 1 on your list, it's not as devastating. It's not as much a scenario for heartbreak because you've discovered these other schools that have a lot to offer. And second, you honestly, via the process of really getting to know who the instrument / voice professor that you're going to study with, really getting to know that person, hopefully possibly taking a sample lesson, whether in person or in Zoom or whatever, you actually might find that you overall actually wind up being more interested in that school. So I guess if forced to give a number, I'd say around 4 or 5 sounds good. To Heather's point, every school on that list, there should be a reason for it. And as I said before, really look into those other schools and those smaller schools, because you might find some things that really appeal to you that others would have totally looked over.
Those are great comments. And, I might also add, when you're putting your list together, to think about having, a central group of your list that are schools that feel like a really great fit for you. And then also have that reach school in there, and then have some schools that you feel like you're fairly confident that you could get into. Okay, so this next question is a little bit more of a deep dive. So let's talk about the audition process. Some of your schools have pre-screening processes, some of them don't. And if you all had just tips on auditioning, and specifically, especially around staying organized, because as you were talking about how many schools to apply to, just keeping track of everything is quite a trick. So what do you think of the audition process? Let's start with Jared.
Sure. So one thing I would say is one thing I'm often asked about when for most schools, you have options of multiple audition dates. And one thing I'm often asked about is what is the best audition date, okay? And as a general answer, the best audition day is the one that you're prepared for. I will say, having done this job for 9 years, I haven't noticed any strong correlations between someone choosing this specific audition day and whether or not they're admitted. So I'm just speaking for myself and my own institution, but I haven't noticed any correlations with that. So again, the best audition day is the one that you're prepared for. On the topic of pre-screening, this is another reason why, Heather had mentioned, please reach out to the admissions person in music because they're your best go-to. I will echo that because if you send an email or call, whichever you prefer, to the music admissions person, that will directly get into things like, oh, by the way, this is the pre-screening requirement, et cetera, et cetera. It really makes things easier if you start with the music admissions person rather than general admissions. And just really briefly, just to talk about my institution, for undergrad, we only have one instrument area that requires pre-screening. Jazz requires pre-screening materials at my institution. None of the other instrument areas do. So that's just what I have to add in terms of trying to, focus what the best audition day is for you. At the end of the day, the best audition day is the one that you're prepared for. And in my own personal experience, I don't see any reason to overthink that. And second, just so as a general reminder, just to echo Heather, try to go directly to the music admissions person for your questions, because that makes everything so much quicker and you learn a lot really quickly. And that's all.
I'm a big fan of checklists and timelines and notes. So I recommend keeping notes on your phone or in a you know, if you like to handwrite it. If you like to make notes in your phone, make those there. Put things in your calendar. Help, you know, it helps when things come down to the wire. The music admissions folks that you speak with will know the deadlines that they want you to aim for. So check in with them, and we don't mind if we get repeat questions a month or two later. You know, we understand the process that you're going through, and you're trying to keep, you know, several different schools and processes straight. So use those resources. Check, I would say check with each school and whether they have a different audition day for certain instruments. Sometimes faculty, or if you're scheduling an individual day, some schools will schedule an individual visit and audition for you. Some won't. Some you have to be there. Some will accept recorded auditions if the geographical distance or if there are reasons you can't get to that school. There are some that will accept a recorded audition. Some prioritize early admission or early action over regular decision. And is there a financial benefit to one or the other? I do agree with Jared that you should not audition until you are absolutely ready with that material. Absolutely confident. You've played it a million times. You've performed it for friends and family in other contexts. I know that you'll feel at the sort of the top of your game when you've got that kind of depth of preparation. Check repertoire though. That's another repertoire. Audition requirements also could vary from school to school. Some schools want more or less technique, scales, arpeggios. Some voice faculty will want you to read a poem. Some will want certain kinds of art songs or you know, language, that kind of thing. So again, you know, the research comes in really handy. Make notes on those things when you find them out. Prepare accordingly. Your private teacher is your best friend as you prepare for auditions. So use that resource as well, as they have been through this. Likely they've been through that process or they've walked other students through it. So all those things are super helpful, I think, as you approach the audition season. And then one more thing, because I am a mom too, and I've watched students go through all of this, take care of yourself during that stretch of time. It's a taxing and stressful period of time for you, as you may be traveling, you may be doing those 5 to 7 to 10 auditions around the country or in a certain area, or sometimes all over the place. Students tell me they're going to the coasts and to the Midwest and to the South and to do all these auditions. So take care of yourself physically. Be careful with your body because you do have limitations, and you also have senior year programs and concerts and demands. So that's just my mom voice coming out, is pace yourself and start preparing early so you're not down to the wire as far as your readiness.
I think my biggest recommendation, I am a huge fan of spreadsheets. If you take, let's say we're using the number 5, right? We've got 5 schools we love. Take the pre-screen and audition requirements from those 5 schools and put them in a spreadsheet. I guarantee you multiple requirements are going to overlap, and that will give you a really good visual of just how much repertoire you need to prepare. Maybe you need 4 things for each school, and then you need to prepare 7 pieces in total. So if you look at it in kind of total repertoire that you need to prepare for the whole audition season, that might make it feel a little bit more digestible rather than being like, I need this for this school and that for the other. So look at the whole picture altogether. Now, day of audition, I echo what my colleagues are saying. Pick material that you feel super good about. Pick material you love. You've been playing it for long enough that it's in your body. You know that even with a little bit of nerves, you're going to walk in there and you're going to feel like you can really give it your all. Our faculty want you to succeed. I guarantee you, every single audition room you walk into, those people want you to be good. They want to hear great music. They want to hear the joy of what music brings to you. They don't want you to mess up. They don't want you to be embarrassed. So walk in there with that sense, with that confidence that everybody in that room wants you to succeed and that you've chosen repertoire that you feel comfortable with. So in the instance that you flub a note, because it happens to the best of us, you still feel like you were best prepared. You put yourself in the best situation. Auditions can be stressful. It's just the name of the game. There's nothing that we can say to you to make it be like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It feels stressful. I think we're all musicians in some sense. We've all kind of been from this world, so we get it. And I think that's something important to also remember when you're talking to these admissions professionals, especially from music schools. A good percentage of us come from the same background. So we get it. That's why we do this. So we understand what you're going through. If you have a question, if you have nerves, give us a call. It is our job to help you. And I guarantee you the people you're going to talk to will be happy to be part of this journey with you. So just remember to pick rep you feel good about, go in there, give it your all. And, you know, I guarantee you it will be a positive experience if you have that mindset.
One thing I always tell my families that I'm working with is, especially for all of you sophomores and juniors out there, it's rare that colleges whole change their audition repertoire. You can go and look what the repertoire is right now and learn that now, or start taking that to your teacher. Like, okay, I know it's fall of my junior year. By the spring, I want to be able to do this, or by next fall, I want to be able to do this. I can tell you, I changed some sort of thing for the brass department at Roosevelt 10 years ago. It's the same. They have not changed it. And it's just because getting faculty to agree on things can sometimes be a little tricky. So that's one thing is you can go look right now, sophomores and juniors. It's not going to change most likely. You should check back and make sure, because sometimes they do, but most don't. The other thing I think it's important to understand, especially you seniors out there, the process takes longer for musicians. All right. Even if you're doing early action, that audition adds a whole other layer. So you may be having friends who are English majors who are getting into schools and finding out in November and making a decision. They're done. It's great. You may not find out until the end of March. That's totally normal. There are music faculty out there that won't make a decision about the clarinet studio until they've heard all the clarinets, and they won't make decisions as they go. You have done nothing wrong. It just takes a while. So it's just kind of know that, take care of yourself, pace yourself, prepare things early so that you have all that. And yes, your way to nirvana is through a Google Doc. Absolutely. A Google spreadsheet, man. You could sort all of that. And that's one of the things I help my students with all the time. Like, where's your Google spreadsheet? Where is it? Let's look at this. Because it's going to take a while. It's totally cool though, because I think that's our superpower as musicians. These colleges get to know our musicians in a way that they don't know the English majors. They don't know the engineering majors. They know that we know through our music, we can speak so much more, and it's our superpower. So it's worth taking the time to do all of that.
Wow, you guys are so amazing. This is such great advice. And Heather, to your point, so my birthday is on April 20th, and there was one school that I'm not going to say which one because I love it dearly, but there was one school that I got a response from on my birthday. So April 20th. So anyway, I just wanted to add one thing, and this is a little bit of a transition to our next topic. And that is like, hold the word buffer in your brain. And, whatever deadlines you've got, think about adding like an extra week prior to that, so that if something goes wrong, you submitted your application, but something went wrong with your Wi-Fi, that you have time to make those corrections. And likewise for your audition, you might be the kind of person that can fly around the country the morning of an audition and walk in and nail it. But you might also want to think about getting in the night before, getting a good night's rest, drinking lots of water and all that good stuff. So a buffer is your friend for sure. So along those lines, why don't we have a quick chat about pacing and mental health? And Rhonda made mention of this earlier, how important it is to take good care of yourself, not only physically, but also emotionally and mentally and spiritually in all of the ways that matter. So let's have a chat about pacing yourself. Is it possible to injure yourself in your efforts to get all the repertoire learned? And how do you prevent burnout when you're dealing with back-to-back travel and auditions, and not to mention just the stress of senior year? Because as we all know, many musicians are also AP students and they're also starters on whatever team. And how do we protect ourselves from those challenges? Heather, do you want to start?
Thank you. So one thing, I think you will have to make some choices, to be very honest. And there will be a time that you will look at these different audition dates that you have, and you will have 3 schools and 2 weekends, and you got to make some choices. So it's okay. That is okay. So I think it is perfectly fine to make some strategic choices. You do not have to visit every single school before you apply. You probably should before you give them a lot of money in the spring and decide to go there, but you can make those choices. I can tell you, as a former admission person, I don't want you to blow off the school band concert. I want you to be participating in your youth orchestra's concert. And so, you're talking to the admissions people and you're looking at all of that. I think it's got to be you have calendars and you are looking ahead. What's lovely about everyone, I have actually students applying to all of your institutions this year, and you guys do a great job of putting your stuff out there. So we've taken a look. I'm like, okay, we hit the pre-screen on this one. That means this is when you're going to do your audition day, and this is when it's all of that planning ahead. But you don't have to do. I know I said 7 to 10. You don't have to audition to 7 to 10 schools. And you may not because of pre-screens. It is more planning ahead and making some choices and understanding, like, okay, I didn't get to campus for that audition, but I went and visited in April. And that is that's when you do that. And that's when admitted student days are and all those fun events. So really taking the long view, again, you're not going to know right away. You're not going to know in October. You're going to know in March. And so spreading that all out is really, really key.
I was walking through the halls of Wheaton the other day, and I ran into a senior oboe student. She is a music ed student. She's looking at her senior recital, actually next weekend, I believe. And she'll be student teaching in the spring. And so she's, kind of getting close to the end as a college student, getting to the end of her bachelor's degree. And I said, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you feeling prepared? And she said, Rhonda, sometimes I breathe in and then I forget to breathe out. And I said, oh my goodness, you have to go both ways. So it was a good reminder to me that this pacing idea, this idea of taking care of ourselves in all the ways that Jenny mentioned, is really a lifelong process, right? It's a learning process. We all have limitations, and like Heather said, you may have to say no to some things. You may have to decide or prioritize. You certainly will at some point. As you study music in college, music study in college is much more intense than what you've experienced up to that point. So you will, you will have to decide again and pace yourself, give yourself buffer. I love that idea. I love the idea of breathing in and out, remembering both as you move through as you check things off the list, one thing at a time. Using resources. Whoops, sorry, those are my dogs. Using resources that are available to you. So people, teachers, take care of yourself physically. Let your parents help you with that. Eat well, sleep enough, all of those things. You can't just practice 10 or 12 hours a day and expect to stay healthy as you approach the end of your senior year, the middle of your senior year even. That's just not sustainable. So find a balance, find a happy spot. in that process, and see if you can maintain it and keep checking things off your list and keep breathing.
I think this idea of setting boundaries with yourself about how many you really are capable of doing, or what really can stay on your plate and not be too full, is important to note. But sometimes, and this is just kind of with life, sometimes you have no choice. And I think when you're in that situation where, okay, I have 6 auditions, I've committed to it, I feel like I'm really overloaded, but I have to do it. I think in that scenario, that's where you can really practice, like, what is my headspace in this? What is my outlook on it? If you think of all of these auditions as incredible celebrations of how hard you have been working for the past 6 or 7 years, you've been working for this moment. It may feel so stressful, so overwhelming. I promise you, 5 to 10 years from now, you're going to look back at your 18-year-old self and be so proud of you that you spent all this time working up to this moment. You're going to end up at whatever college you end up at, and it's going to be the best. Like, the place you were supposed to end up at is the place you will end up, I promise you. But I want you to try to find moments of joy and celebration and appreciation for yourself in all the hard work that you've been putting in up until this moment, because it's really easy to lose sight of that in all of the audition rep and the stress of everything. Maybe make yourself like a little celebration after every audition. You get yourself an ice cream cone after every audition, or something that brings you joy. I'm going to say that so many times tonight. But pick the thing that makes you happy, that feels like a treat, a reward, a celebration in the moment, because while this is a lot, this is a big life moment, it's also a big moment of celebration. So do keep that in mind as you're going through these auditions.
The only thing I have to add, and I apologize if I'm taking this question a bit literally, but during this time, you might be practicing a bit more than usual because you're trying to master various repertoire, okay? If during that period, when you're practicing a bit more, if you experience any discomfort while playing, stress in your voice, anything like that, do not ignore and push through it. If you find yourself in that situation, go to your private teacher. Go to your private teacher right away. I know some of you may not have private teachers. In that case, go to your band, orchestra, choir director, okay, with that, and figure out what you're doing that's causing the discomfort. I know that this is a time in life that you have to just do a bit more than usual, and you very well may have to practice more than usual, but you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're feeling any physical discomfort, ignoring it and push through it. Long term, that won't be good. So that's just the one thing I wanted to add.
That's such an important point. And, you know, I'd also like to add, it's sometimes you look ahead and you've got like, I don't know, whatever, 6 or 10 auditions on the horizon, and you just feel like, can I even do this? And, you know, one thing that I always remember when I have something really stressful in front of me is this is not infinite. There is a finite end to this period, and you can muscle through, and, you know, you can celebrate all of the wonderful things that you do, and you'll learn from the things that you feel like weren't perfectly wonderful. But I do think that it's really important to think about your auditions as a chance to show off all the great work that you've done. And it's a chance to show everyone the dedication that you've placed into learning this great repertoire and this great music. And for all of you CYSO folks, don't forget there's Kilwins right next door. So there's really good chocolate. So there's lots of opportunities to celebrate there. So anyway, let's go on. Another important topic. Let's talk about tuition. How can I afford college? Can you all just give us your insights on loans, interest-free, interest-bearing, scholarships, financial aid, and just any sort of tuition-related ideas and assistance that you might be able to share? Let's see, Rhonda, would you like to start?
Sure. I think there are multiple resources that pool together in most cases. Certainly at Wheaton, students have the academic award potentially. Some schools would want you to apply for an academic scholarship. Others will just take a look at your application as you present it and let you know if you qualify. Then music scholarships based on the audition. In our case, I think probably most schools have some music scholarship that that you may qualify for. And then we have the grants or need-based aid that is based on the FAFSA. And this year, the FAFSA's pushed back a little bit. It's going to be an interesting year, this first year for all of us, with a new timeline for the FAFSA. So it used to be available October 15th, and we would encourage families to, do it quickly, do it early, get it done, send it to the schools you're applying to. Now it's coming out in December. So there is a bit of a delay in that process, which will add to the intrigue and the waiting process for packages that will be, likely delayed until after the new year. But the need-based aid will come in a variety of forms, and those forms would be grants, which are not, you do not pay back a grant. Scholarships, you do not pay back. You have no responsibility to reimburse or pay that back. Loans are another source of college, covering that college expense. Loans can be in a variety of forms. You have a subsidized loan. That's where basically the government pays the interest on that loan until you are out of school and you pay it back. So there's a little grace period after you graduate, and then you start paying back the principal, what you've actually taken out from that subsidized loan. The unsubsidized loan is where you start, the interest starts accumulating as you go. So you do pay a little more interest on an unsubsidized loan from federal or state. There are other ways, other scholarships, outside scholarships, certainly internal scholarships from each school, but also you might apply for a Rotary club, or you might have an academic scholarship from your high school or from a club that you belong to. Your parents may have, their company may offer a scholarship that students of those employees can apply for. So I recommend, in my opinion, the application comes first and then the financial resources, but you can sort of start thinking about that all the way through as well. And that maybe should go on your Google spreadsheet too. Like what's available at this school. Is there a deadline? Is there an additional application? Is it automatically based on my application or my audition? Keeping track of that is another step in the process, and certainly one that you can discuss with your parents, discuss resources, discuss whether you're comfortable taking loans. It's really, that's an individual decision, but many music schools will offer lots of opportunities, lots of ways to pull that sticker price way down. So
I think it's important to understand how a college awards aid. Some schools are need only, some schools, and so if you don't qualify for needs, you're going to pay the full sticker price. Some schools do offer just artistic ones, or sometimes they combine. Legally, every college has to have a net price calculator on their financial aid website. So you should go there and check that out. I don't assume that private schools are going to be the most expensive option. The lovely thing about private schools is they get to chart their own course, and many times they have way more control over their scholarship budget than, say, a public institution that is beholden to state legislatures and those kinds of budgets. I know my first year at Shy Arts, I didn't have any students attend the University of Illinois Chicago because they all got better offers elsewhere from private institutions, because even though their tuition started lower, the private school could come down way lower. Now, since that's many years ago, and UIC has actually really done a good job of revamping their financial aid, all love to University of Illinois, Chicago. But at the time, it was a surprise to a lot of these institutions. So I think the things to remember with financial aid, hit all of your deadlines. That's a real easy way to qualify for financial aid. Don't miss your deadlines. Apply early, get things done. Secondly, get all of the financial aid forms. Some schools will require an additional financial aid form called the CSS profile. That's primarily at more private schools. You can see if you go just Google CSS profile, it'll tell you the schools that you can look up. So you got to look at that. Some schools, everybody requires a FAFSA, some require the CSS. So you want to look at that. I think with scholarships, anything you can Google, so can anybody else in the country. So you want to look for small applicant pools. So, and Rhonda nailed it. If your parents have a scholarship for children of employees, do that. Your high school has a certain thing, do that. Chicago Public School kids, there is a special email list you can get on for Chicago Public Schools scholarships, and you should be doing those. You want small applicant pool. That's the key there. Please don't spend your time Googling things. Please don't do that, because it is literally statistically easier to get into Harvard than it is to get some of these scholarships when everybody in the country is applying for them. It's not that they're not legit. It's just, let's look at just numbers. So that's really what you want to do. You really want to be really clear. If a school does not give any merit aid and you won't qualify for any need, you need to really think about that if that fits in with your family's budget. And so having a clear idea of what that is, this is not a time to be an ostrich. You can't stick your head in the sand on this money. Money's awkward and weird, and your parents might get weird about it, but far better to have an awkward conversation your junior year and know where everybody stands than to get right up to the bitter end and realize you fall in love with a school that simply will not work financially for your family. So definitely think about this sooner than later. And as awkward as it is, you know, have the conversation. It will be far much better to do that.
I think piggybacking off of this idea of how awkward it is to talk about money and scholarship, it may feel awkward to you, but I promise it's not awkward to us. It's part of our job. So if you are awarded a scholarship amount and it's not quite enough to make it possible for you to attend a school, call the school, call the admissions office, call the financial aid office. The worst they're going to say is, no, we don't do scholarship appeals. I promise they won't be mad that you asked. So that's my you didn't hear that from me, but you know, that it is a thing with schools. So do keep that in mind. Manhattan School of Music awards on an equal combination of merit, audition scores, and demonstrated need. So if you are someone who had really high merit and really high need, that is the key to getting a full tuition scholarship. Person with really high merit and maybe not very much financial need might get something around here. So that's what you would see from us, but it might be wildly different from a very similar kind of conservatory institution or a completely, you know, a school of music institution. You might get something crazy high from one school and crazy low from another. I promise it has nothing to do with you. I guarantee that the schools just award different kind of measures. And one last thing about Manhattan School of Music's financial aid or scholarship awards. We are a small school, we're a small team. And when we are awarding these amounts, it is me and a couple of other people in a room talking about every single one of you individually. We're not typing numbers into a calculator and spitting out generating a scholarship. It is a very human conversation. Going back to, you know, what I said, how I'd be there to advocate for who you are as a human being. That's part of that conversation. So do keep that in mind, and, you know, we'll circle back to the awkwardness thing. We are having that. It's not awkward for us. We're having that conversation. And if you want to jump in that conversation after the fact and see if something else could be possible, all you have to do is ask. We're all humans. We totally get it. And that's something I want you to remember about this entire college process. We're all humans. We all get that this is a big moment in life, and we're just here to help.
I'd like to echo what Heather said, is that you don't have to necessarily, sometimes there's assumption that you look at the cost of private schools and you just can't afford it. And that's not always the case. One thing to know is that the financial aid / scholarship picture at private institutions is usually very different from the financial aid / scholarship picture at public institutions. So I'm speaking very broadly here, just very broadly, I'm speaking in generalities. But at private institutions, it's often more common that people that attend them actually don't pay the sticker price. Whereas at public universities, it's you almost usually, the vast majority of the time, you do pay the sticker price. So we talked before about the number of institutions that you might want to apply to. And, Rhonda and I said, 4 or 5 sounds good. Heather thought that 7 to 10 might be better, et cetera, et cetera. I do think that for this reason, that's why you might want to consider 4 or 5 as your go-to rather than 2 or 3, because the picture, the scholarship, financial aid picture is going to be different, so different at different universities. And from that list, consider a private institution or maybe even multiple ones. So speaking on behalf of my institution at UW-Madison, our music scholarships are entirely merit-based. So it's entirely merit-based, based off predominantly off how you played at your audition, but we also look at the letters of recommendation, your music resume, and your background as a musician, but that all comes together in merit. So at my institution, it's pretty much entirely merit-based. We don't factor in need to our music scholarships. There's just not a practical means for us to do that right now. So that's one thing to know. I will say, so one thing I said before is I said, with your audition days, the one that's right for you is the one that you're prepared for is the one that's right for you. You don't necessarily have to rush it. With FAFSA, it's a little different. With FAFSA, I'd say when you get the form, go to your parents, fill it out, send it out right away. Okay, so FAFSA is different from the audition picture. Get the FAFSA part done. And then the other thing that I'd want to add is sometimes I will work with students that have applied and they never bother to look at the tuition situation, right? What the tuition is. I don't recommend putting yourself in that situation because you may find yourself really invested in an institution that you later find out that isn't financially feasible for you. And that's just not fun. So take a look at the tuition, the in-state rate, the reciprocity rate. Some schools have reciprocity with other states. Wisconsin does with Minnesota, and the out-of-state, right? Start from there, okay? Then you can look, this is usually on the School of Music's website. If not, you can just email whoever's in the department, ask what they offer with music scholarships. Take a look at that. Consider what you might get from a music scholarship, what you might get in financial aid, and then you will have a clear picture of whether this institution is potentially financially viable for you. Because if you go through that process, you're like, well, maybe I'll get this in a music scholarship, and maybe I'll get this in financial aid, and it's still just not a workable number. Well, then unfortunately, it's probably not worth going through the entire process if there's no way to make the math work. So that's one thing I want to point out. And then very, very briefly, I just want to go over how scholarships work at my school, because it just might be different because we're a liberal arts university and we're not a conservatory. At UW-Madison, all students that complete an audition for us are automatically entered in consideration for music scholarships. You don't have to fill out any forms. You don't have to tell us that you're interested. You just complete an audition for us and we get back to you in late March to let you know whether or not we have a scholarship offer for you. In terms of the amounts, the ranges, that's advertised on our website. I can tell you more about that if you want. You can put that in the chat box if you want, and at the end if you want to know. So that's basically it. At UW-Madison, you just audition for us and we get back to you in late March and let you know whether you have a scholarship offer, and that's just how it works here. So school at UW-Madison, our scholarships are pretty much entirely merit-based. FAFSA is based off of, what is determined with the financial information that you put in there. On that basically comes down to your financial need. So at my institution, music scholarships are merit-based. FAFSA, there's a formula for everything. It's basically based on financial need. Another thing is that at my institution, UW-Madison, my institution also offers general academic music scholarship. My apologies. My institution also offers general academic scholarships. And that's one thing that can be different from a conservatory versus a liberal arts university, is that a liberal arts university, it's different. Very well, there may be some things at conservatories, but a liberal arts university oftentimes has general academic scholarships, and we do as well. And at my institution, if you apply for and receive a general academic scholarship, you could combine the general academic scholarship with a school of music scholarship, if you get one, with financial aid. So that is a possibility. And that's just my simplified way of explaining the process. If you want to know more, I'll tell you about that. I just wanted to tell you what it's like at my institution, and that's all.
My only addition to that process is ask whether the scholarships you have received are renewable. Do they continue for 4 years? Is there a limit? If you take an extra semester, does that scholarship drop off after eight semesters? What are the stipulations? If you go in as a music major and you get a music award, what if you decide you want to be a psychology major or you want to switch to a different field? Do you lose that music scholarship? So ask those questions as you process through each individual school's process and as you get further down that line, make sure not just for that first year, for your freshman year, but on down, you want to complete your degree. So you want to make sure you have a similar amount of aid or ways to make up that difference in future years.
Thank you so much. That was so informative. If I can offer one more little tidbit, as you're thinking about all of the responses that you get from colleges, and I know in your generation, you all are so transparent and you talk a lot with each other, and just be careful if you're comparing scholarships and admissions and all of these things with each other, because it can really start to feel very, very stressful, and you can start to feel like you're measuring yourself compared to other people. And it's such an individualized process. Scholarships are, sometimes they're just need-based, and sometimes when they're merit-based, it also has to do with what the particular school is looking for. So they may have a need for 5 more bassoon players and, that kind of thing. So when you go through this process, try to be objective, try and keep yourself a little bit distance and look at things objectively as best as you're able. Okay, so
Jenny, and I have one true story where so my second year at Shy Arts, a student posted online, I got into my dream school, I'm totally going to go. I'm not making this up. The admissions person from another school that was after them called me and said, should we even bother offering them a scholarship? Because we saw on their social media that they're going to this other school. And I'm like, yes, but so you want to think about that, right? Like it is definitely, they'll follow you back on social media. So if you put that I got into my dream school, I'm totally going, you could actually be cutting yourself off. Celebrate, absolutely. We want you to celebrate, but it's social media. We don't really need to put everything online.
Right. Be careful on social media. Great advice. Okay, so I want to allow Emma to lead off in an answer for a question now. So this is coming from our Facebook page from Jen P. Do music faculty members have any influence on the admissions process? If a faculty member knows of a student who would contribute to their program or is proficient on an instrument for which they have a need, would they reach out to admissions on their behalf?
Our faculty love to advocate for students. We are in very, very close communication with them. We have a very close relationships with our faculty. So know that the relationships that you're making with them, it likely comes back in a conversation. Now, that being said, that is not one of the factors that we're looking at when we're making that admissions decision. If you have a relationship with this faculty member and they love you and they've been advocating for you, that should be reflected in your audition score, right? So that is really the main thing that we're looking at. Obviously, if a faculty member, you've been accepted and a faculty member may be advocating for you for additional scholarship or something at that point, we do look at that in a scholarship appeals process. But I would say that the advocation of the faculty really comes into play into their audition scores that they're giving you. And the more that we hear your name, the more that we know your name is wonderful, but we can hear your name in a lot of ways. That could be me meeting you on a Zoom. That could be you coming to a campus tour. So it's not all about the faculty. It's not all about us. It is a beautiful mixture of all different ways that we're getting to know you throughout this process.
For me, speaking from behalf of my institution, Liberal Arts University, one thing I noted before is that at my institution, academics play a very key role as to whether you're admitted, and that's a little different, say, from Emma's institution, where the audition is the biggest piece of the puzzle. So at my institution, general admission to the university is based off of a standard academic review. And that is largely separate from the music application and audition. So at my institution, if a student is clearly below academic standards of admissibility, unfortunately, a successful audition is not going to sway that at all. If a student is borderline for academic admission, then a successful audition may bump the university's general decision in their favor. So that's how it works. And that at my institution, liberal arts university, academics is quite important. And that decision that the Office of Admissions makes is largely independent of the music audition. Now, in cases where a professor will choose to advocate for a student, it's kind of similar like I described before, where if a student is borderline for admission, but they have a successful audition, that might bump the overall Office of Admission decisions in your favor, okay? A faculty recommendation at my institution is similar. It has a similar effect. If a student is borderline for admission, it might bump them up. So, but it's, in my institution, a faculty member advocating on behalf of a student cannot sway a decision if a student is clearly below academic standards for admission. That's just how it works at my institution. I suspect that a lot of liberal arts universities are similar to that. At my institution, our faculty are very passionate about their students and their applicants, and they do everything they can to advocate on their behalf. And at my institution, our faculty do have some ability to influence the university's decision, but it's somewhat modest. It sounds like my position at UW-Madison is a bit different from Emma's position on that. And that's just something to know about a university when you go in. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Emma's institution is conservatory and my institution is not. So that's just something to know. There's something to keep in mind. Yeah.
Okay, going on. So here at CYSO, a little less than 50% of our students will go on into music careers, and a little more than 50% will go on into non-music careers, but they're all wonderful musicians, incredible artists. So the next question has to do with doing music in college, potentially as a non-major. For Jared, at a big university, how does one who is a strong musician but not planning on majoring or minoring in music find opportunities? Are there instructors and quality experiences available for those who just want to keep playing and learning?
Yeah, so there's two ways to answer that question. So first is that there are options at my institution for non-music majors to continue playing. At my institution, non-music majors are free to audition for all of the ensembles. And in virtually all of the ensembles, all of them have some non-music majors in there. So that's one option, is to audition for the music ensembles. And if your audition is successful, you can enroll in those ensembles, you can play in them. And that's a really big one, because we're quite proud of the level of our ensembles. And if you can play it, if you're a non-music major and you can play at a sufficient level, you can play in them, and that's really great. So that's one thing I'll let everyone know. At my institution, our auditions are blind. We actually don't know who is auditioning for us. We cannot see them, we can only hear them. And via that process, we have some non-majors that play in virtually all of our ensembles. So that's a big one. Second is that there are some general music classes available at my institution for non-music majors to take. They range from broad survey courses like history of American big bands, history of the opera, to an introductory music theory class, to a music appreciation class that can be taken multiple times. And we do have a list of that on our website. If anyone wants to know, I can give you the link to that. So for non-music majors, one you can audition for the ensembles, and if successful, you can play in those ensembles. 2, there are some general music courses that are open for non-music majors to take. 3, private lessons with instrument faculty are usually off limits for non-music majors. However, at my institution, we have a program called Community Music Lessons, and Community Music Lessons is a means of purchasing private instrument/voice lessons from graduate students. And that's another option you have to continue playing as well. And if you want to know like real specifics about that, I'm happy to answer that during the question and answer question. That's the 3 main ways. And second thing, I'll be very quick about this, but another thing to keep in mind is the possibility of double majoring. Double majoring is a very big part of my institution at UW-Madison. And actually UW-Madison, half of our students double major, half of our students complete a major in addition to music. And that process may be more viable than you think. Of course, double majoring is difficult, and of course, you're taking on more work. But that may be more viable than you think. It depends on what the second major is. And it also depends on AP, advanced placement / IB classes that you had taken in high school. If you are someone that's taken a lot of AP classes and you've taken the corresponding test and you've gotten a 3 or 4, 3 or above, you very well may enter college with a fair amount of credits. And if you enter college with a fair amount of credits, that makes a double major a lot more viable than you may have thought. So I wanted to give you the idea of non-music majors, of what you can do at my institution, which is a fair amount, a good amount of opportunity, but also just remind you that if you're someone that comes in with a lot of AP credits, double majoring very well may be a possibility for you. And I just want to keep that in the back of your mind. And that's all.
That's great. Thank you. Maybe this could be directed at Heather and, oh, I'm sorry, Emma, I saw that you unmuted. Did you want to add something?
Surprisingly, I do have something to add to that topic. We actually have a partnership with Barnard College. So students who want to be a full-time student at Barnard and study whatever they want to study at Barnard could actually apply. It's a much shorter application for us to take private lessons with our faculty. So let's say you want to take private weekly lessons, but you don't want to be a music major. That's an option at MSM, actually. You would just be a Barnard student and apply to take those private lessons with our faculty. So keep that in mind if Barnard's on your list.
And, you know, several music schools do have those sort of collaborative relationships with academic institutions. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think Juilliard has something similar with Columbia, and Eastman, of course, has the University of Rochester. I mean, Eastman is actually part of the University of Rochester, but it's a distance of 5 miles. So you'd be surprised. There are a lot of options. Rhonda and Heather, would you guys like to chime in on that topic?
Really, it's a part of the trick is figuring out what role you want music to play in your life. I mean, if you are a member of the Chicago Youth Orchestra, obviously music plays some important role in your life. It is okay if you're not a music major and you're still a successful musician and you understand what that vital role of music is. And we, the ensemble, I was a professional symphony musician for many years, and now I play in a really great community ensemble because I can't stand the thought of not going to rehearsal once a week. And for me, that's really, really important. You to talk to 18-year-old Heather, she couldn't conceive of that. Of course, I'm going to be the contrabassoonist for the Chicago Symphony, obviously. That didn't happen. But it's okay if you haven't figured out your relationship with music. I actually think, you know, everybody should play a little bit. And, you know, if you really can't imagine yourself doing anything else, major in music. But I do love a music minor. Oh my gosh, it's all the fun and none of the audition stress. It's great. So I do love a music minor. But when you're thinking about these different options, when I was a music major, I was practicing 6 hours a day. 6 hours a day. And that's not rehearsals. That's not lessons. That's getting in there and doing my scales and then doing my excerpts and then doing, you know, the solo stuff. And that was normal. And that's what I had to do as a music major at a serious institution, because you have to get to that kind of level where you just breathe it. You don't, you know, the bassoon becomes part of you. Odd picture. Sorry. Forget I said that. Anyway, but I do. So, but I think if you have, you know, music is important to you, but you want to study, you know, a wide variety of things, you definitely look at a music minor or a double major. I have a hard time recommending a double major just because there's There's only 24 hours in a day. So it's just hard. It's just really hard. But that's why you look at these different kinds of institutions, and we started off by saying there's one out there for everyone. Absolutely. There's so many, and we're lucky. We're musicians, we've been doing music degrees longer than anybody else is doing arts degrees. So I'll turn it over to Rhonda. I want to give you a chance.
Maybe Rhonda, I'll start off with this next question for you. What if you get to music school and decide you don't want to do a performance major any longer?
That is a great question. I think conversations with your private teacher, with even go back to the admissions people. I talk to current students very often about their pathway. You'll have a faculty advisor more than likely that you could discuss options with. Certainly your peers will be interested in that discussion and in your processing. There are lots of ways to, as we've already said, there are lots of ways to include music in your day-to-day, in your transcript, and in your life without pursuing a performance degree. So one of the, and a lot of schools offer the Music Plus idea. Music Plus, and in our case at Wheaton, it's called Music with Elective Studies in an Outside Field, which is a terrible name. It's basically music plus something else. And you can choose whatever that other thing is. It's all one major, but there's enough credit in that other field that you can add something else to that. So it's a professional music degree plus almost a double major in another field. So students that are interested in music therapy might do music plus psychology to set themselves up for a master's in music therapy. Someone who wants to go to med school. Did you know that med schools accept music majors very often? So you can be a performance major, take the required science courses to prepare for the MCAT, take the MCAT and go to med school. Or you can do the Bachelor of Music with elective studies in pre-health sciences or in biology or in chemistry. Any of those are possibilities at many schools. So ask about those things. If you're particularly good at creative writing, or if you're a studio artist in addition to a musician, or if you just love the sciences, or maybe you don't even know it yet, but you're going to love philosophy. You can add a minor in philosophy, or you can major in philosophy and do a music minor, or you can do that music plus philosophy idea, that degree, and combine your interests. It really is the balance of music, the balance of academic interests that you have. Like Heather said, performance majors, you really ought to love the process of practicing. You really ought to love that practicing and that perfecting process. If you struggle with that as a high school student, something's not going to just click necessarily. I mean, I suppose you could have a bit of a change or grow into that a bit, but that really is the requirement for a performance major. So if you don't love that process, then you maybe ought to find something else that, and I say that to music ed students too. Don't use music ed, the BME program, as sort of a backup. Like, I want to be a performer, but I want to make a living, so I'll just do music ed. Music ed is a calling. We want really passionate teachers who are good at teaching to be in those music ed jobs. So influencing the younger generations of musicians, right? So it's not like the substitute if you don't get the symphony job as much as it is a real calling and a placement for those who love to teach and love, again, that teaching learning process. So I often advise students against, like, well, I don't know if I'll make it, so I'll do music ed. Maybe think about it a little differently. Think about that process and get lots of advice. Ask people what how they see you, ask what they think. We also at Wheaton, we have a wonderful Center for Vocation and Career that helps students as early as the second semester of your freshman year. You can go into that office and you can take tests that give you an idea of where your strengths are. You can apply for campus jobs or off-campus jobs. You can find internships that might interest you. You can, there's a wealth of resources to help you sort of discover, who you're meant to be and what you're meant to do. And everybody around you wants to help you with that too. So don't hesitate to share those ideas or talk about that process widely. Don't keep that to yourself.
Thank you, Rhonda. And I know Rhonda will agree with me when I say this. Not everyone loves practicing 100% of the time. So, if you mostly love practicing, but, everyone has days where they feel like they're going to pitch the instrument out the window. So that's normal.
Yes.
But all such excellent advice. Thank you so much. We have just a few minutes left, so I'm going to be very specific on who I toss these questions at so that we can be mindful of everyone's time. Emma, how do general education credits, AP credits, community college classes transfer to conservatories?
So at MSM, we don't really accept AP credits, things of that nature, because your coursework is so focused on that music education piece. You taking an AP literature class isn't really going to be that helpful. We still need you to take a number of humanities electives type courses within your curriculum. It's a very small percentage of your curriculum. Now, let's say we're talking about something like an AP theory. That seems like that should be transferable to a conservatory, right? The way that that's going to help you out is through your placement into the theory class. So there are classes like theory, oral skills, keyboard skills, music history. You're going to take placement exams for those in the summer before you start with us in the fall. And then if you place out of, say you place into level 3 theory, because you did take AP theory, you're going to have more room for electives later down the line. So you could take things like composition or music production or things that are more interesting to you within this kind of musical development that you're doing. So unfortunately, we don't accept AP credits in terms of your credit, but it certainly can help you in many ways in terms of the knowledge that you have.
And that actually brings me to my next question. And maybe this one, Heather, you might be able to address this because you deal with so many different kinds of students, but how much music theory should a person have before college?
I think if you're going to be a music major, you're just going to be kind to your future self. Take music theory sooner because it's a rough road if you get in there and you just starting from ground zero. It's not impossible. You read music, so you at least got that. But if you can take some theory classes, whether it's AP theory, maybe through your youth orchestra, through a summer festival, your life's just going to be easier. I still have memories of trying to beat our ear training exercises into my head. My high school did not offer AP music theory, and I white knuckled it through, and it was rough. And so if you can do it, don't do it because you're going to get AP credits. Do it because it's going to make your life easier when you're studying college level music theory, which you have to do. I did not understand that until much later in my career. And of course, now I use music theory all the time. I actually arrange music all the time for woodwind quintet. And so I use my theory all the time, and I actually really love it. But just be nice to your future self. If you have no intention whatsoever of doing any sort of collegiate music study, you could probably skip AP music theory, unless you really like theory. More fun than you think.
Just a couple of quick things to add on the theory topic. A great way to prepare for theory in college is actually to find a private tutor. So look at your local music departments, community colleges or small colleges, and, find their theory teachers, find their music faculty, and do just like a summer of weekly tutoring. It will go a long way. And the reason why it's so helpful to have a theory background is if you have zero theory background, you will be fine, but you will be spending a ton of time on theory. And, most of the people who head to music school as undergrads, they just want to play with their instrument. So, it will just save you time. It'll save you stress, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so the last question, what are websites that we can look to for scholarships that may have a smaller applicant pool? Going back to one of our earlier questions.
There's not really good stuff out there for music scholarships. It's like, there's one, Scholarship America. You can sort by state. So if you can at least narrow it down to scholarships just for students in your home state, that gets you part of the way. But I think really looking at organizations, NATS, I believe, has some scholarships for vocalists. I would look at the Flute Society, I would look at the International Vocal Reed Society. But still, it's hard. There's not a lot out there. I know that's in the ethos that, oh, there's millions of dollars of scholarships that go unclaimed. What? For musicians, it's looking local. Again, looking, if there's a Rotary Club, the CPS, there's the Wencher Scholarship for the Arts for Chicago Public School students. That's one that I would look at. Art Search, the National Endowment for the Arts. I know some colleges will offer scholarships for students who participate in the Art Search. You know what I'm talking about, the one with the NEA. And so that's a great one. But again, that's dependent on the college. I feel like your best bet is really doing your research up front and figuring how the schools award and see how they do scholarships. I think that's a better use of your time than trying to find these mythological scholarships. That's been my experience working with students at Shy Arts for many, many years. And I know that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear about, oh my God, it's this website and you just go here and it's perfect and you'll get millions of dollars. It doesn't really exist very well. So I'm sorry, that's not a great answer.
It's one thing that I know you guys are probably all thinking about, and it doesn't yield a ton of money, but you can use competitions as a way of earning money as well. I used to think of it like, okay, my practicing is my job, and then I get paid at the end when I win. So you can think about that in a way, and it also helps you to prepare for your auditions, and it helps you get into the mindset of, just being super focused on stage and things like that. So, there are creative ways that you can go about earning money as well that aren't called scholarships, but that can be something too. And if you're really organized and strategic and using your spreadsheet, you can align competitions with similar repertoire, and then it just gives you a chance to get on stage, and it's not a crazy, crazy amount of work. But anyway, so that brings us to the end of our time. I am so incredibly grateful for the people on this screen, because the wisdom that you all shared, my goodness, I wish that I had heard you when I was 16. I think, I would have looked at this whole process very differently. And to have the perspectives from such a wide-ranging group of schools, and then of course to have Heather kind of over the top of all of it. So I'm very, very grateful, and I'm grateful to you CYSO families for spending the evening with us. And I hope that you had fun. And of course, if you guys have questions, reach out to our team, because we'll be happy to connect you with people who can help. So thank you all so much, and have a wonderful evening.